Here's a number that should make you physically uncomfortable. 500. That's the percentage of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. And before you tell me that's a poor people problem, let me stop you right there. Because buried inside that statistic are doctors, lawyers, software engineers pulling six figures in San Francisco, people who, on paper, look like they've won the game but who are quietly, desperately, one bad month away from catastrophe. And the most painful part? They're working harder than any generation before them. So what's going wrong? Is it laziness? Bad choices? Avocado toast and Netflix subscriptions? That's what they want you to think. Because the moment you believe your financial suffering is a personal failure, a moral failing, even you stop looking at the architecture around you. You stop asking who built the maze. And you definitely stop asking who profits from you running inside it. I spent 2 decades inside the financial system. I've sat in rooms where asset managers talked about consumer stickiness, which is a polished corporate way of saying, how do we make it psychologically painful for people to stop spending? I've watched marketing decks that literally mapped human insecurity to product categories. Loneliness? Sell them a luxury car? Fear of irrelevance? Sell them the newest phone. Shame about their body? Sell them a gym membership they'll use for 11 days in January. This is not conspiracy theory. This is business strategy. And it works on almost everyone, including you, including me, because it's designed by some of the smartest behavioral psychologists on the planet, backed by billions in research funding, aimed at one single goal: making sure your money flows upstream, away from you, and toward them. Now, here's where it gets interesting and where most financial content gets it completely wrong. The popular solution they sell you is budgeting. Track every dollar. Cut your coffee. Hustle harder. Get a side gig. Wake up at 5 a.m. and grind until you bleed. And look, discipline matters. I'm not going to sit here and tell you effort is irrelevant. But here's what nobody tells you. The people who've actually escaped this trap didn't do it by working harder inside the system. They did it by thinking about money in a fundamentally different way. They became minimalists, not in the Instagram aesthetic, white walls and one plant way. I mean, financial minimalists. People who learn to ruthlessly eliminate the invisible expenses, not just the obvious ones, and redirect that energy into something the banks genuinely don't want you to build. No. And I'll prove it with math in a few minutes. But first, let me tell you about the hidden rule that minimalists quietly live by. The rule that financial institutions spend millions of dollars making sure you never discover. It doesn't have a flashy name. It's not the kind of thing that gets printed on motivational posters. But when you see it, when you really see it, it will change the way you look at every single purchase you make for the rest of your life. It's about the difference between consuming your future and owning it. Every dollar you spend today on something that doesn't grow is not just $1 gone. It's the compounded future value of that dollar, the version of that dollar that could have worked for you quietly, invisibly, for decades that you're surrendering. Not to yourself, to someone else's retirement plan. We're going to break down exactly how much that costs you in part 2. But here's the curiosity gap I want to leave open in your mind right now. There's a specific framework, 3 deceptively simple habits that minimalists use to essentially automate wealth building. It doesn't require a finance degree. It doesn't require a high income. In fact, some of the most consistent practitioners of this system make less than $60,000 a year. And they are quietly, systematically building wealth that will outlast them. The system doesn't collapse. It doesn't require willpower every single day. It runs in the background like an operating system you install once, and then let it work. That's what this video is about. But first, you need to understand why you've been wired to fail. Because until you understand the trap, you'll keep stepping in it, no matter how many motivational videos you watch. The banks are not your friends. I know you know that, intellectually. But knowing it and feeling it structurally, understanding how every product they offer is engineered against your long-term interests, those are very different things. The average American pays over $2,000 a year just in bank fees, overdraft charges, and credit card interest. That's not a rounding error. That's a car payment. That's a family vacation. That's 4 months of groceries. And the entire fee structure is designed to hit hardest on people with the least financial buffer, which means the system is regressive by design. The poorer you are, the more you pay for the privilege of being poor. Meanwhile, the same banks take your deposits, lend them out at 8, 10, 12%, and hand you back 0.04% in interest. They are in the business of renting your money to other people, and keeping the margin. Every single day, penny back. This is the system you're trying to budget your way out of. And that's like trying to bail out a sinking boat with a teaspoon. What the minimalists figured out, what the quiet wealth builders understood, is that you can't win by playing defense forever. At some point, you have to change the game entirely. And that starts with the math. Let me introduce you to Sarah. Sarah is 28 years old. She's smart, genuinely smart. marketing manager at a mid-sized tech firm, pulling in $72,000 a year. She's not reckless. She doesn't gamble. She doesn't blow money on designer clothes every weekend. By most people's standards, Sarah is responsible, but Sarah has a problem she can't quite name. Every month, she makes decent money. Every month, it somehow disappears. And at the end of each year, she has about the same amount in savings as she did at the beginning, which is to say, almost nothing. No debt spiral, no obvious disaster. Just a kind of quiet, exhausting financial stagnation that feels like running on a treadmill at a slight incline, forever. Sound familiar? Here's what Sarah's money actually looks like when we map it out, and this is where the math gets genuinely uncomfortable. Sarah brings home about $4,800 per month after taxes. Her rent is $1,400. Car payment, because Sarah, like most people, bought slightly more car than she needed because the dealership told her she could afford it, is $520 a month. Insurance, $180. That's $2,100 gone before she buys a single meal. Then comes what I call the invisible expenditure layer. This is where financial minimalists and average consumers part ways dramatically. Subscriptions, Sarah doesn't actively think about $340 a month? Yes, add yours up right now. You'll be shocked. Eating out and delivery because she's tired after work, because cooking feels like another job, another $420. Random retail spending, what behavioral economists call ambient consumption, the things you buy not because you plan to, but because you walked past them, or an algorithm showed them to you 4 times, roughly $280 a month. We're now at $3,140. Gone. Every month. Without Sarah making a single decision she'd classify as extravagant. She saves about $200 a month on a good month and puts it in a savings account, earning essentially nothing. Now, here's where I want you to feel the weight of this number. $847,000. That is the approximate future value of the money. Sarah is leaking through the invisible expenditure layer if instead of spending that $1,040 a month on ambient consumption and unnecessary subscriptions, she invested it consistently over 30 years at a modest 8% annual return. $847,000. Not because Sarah is rich, not because she got lucky, simply because of the math of compound interest applied over time. This is the compound redirection principle, the core framework that minimalist wealth builders live by. It's deceptively simple. Every dollar you redirect from consumption to compounding is worth not $1, but many multiples of that dollar over time. The minimalist doesn't see a $15 impulse purchase. They see $60, $80, $100, the future value of that $15 surrendered permanently. That mental recalibration changes everything about how they make decisions. But here's what makes this framework so powerful, and why it goes deeper than just spend less, invest more. It's about financial psychology, about why Sarah and most of us make these decisions in the first place. The culprit is a phenomenon called lifestyle creep. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It's the slow, invisible expansion of your baseline, the gradual upward drift of what you consider normal spending that perfectly tracks your income increases. You get a raise. Your rent goes up slightly. Your car gets slightly nicer. Your restaurant choices get slightly more expensive. Your vacations get slightly more elaborate. And mysteriously, you never seem to have more money than you did before, even though you earn significantly more. This is not weakness. This is neurological design. Our brains are wired for social comparison. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism. When the people around us level up, our threat detection system registers falling behind as a genuine danger. So we spend to maintain relative status. Not because we're vain, because our ancient brain architecture literally cannot easily distinguish between "I might be excluded from the tribe" and "my neighbor got a nicer couch." The financial industry doesn't just tolerate this instinct, it weaponizes it. Luxury brands deliberately price items just above what feels comfortable, because the mild financial pain is part of the status signal. Credit companies extend limits precisely when you're most financially stretched, because debt is their product. Social media platforms optimize for envy because envy drives consumption. Sarah isn't failing because she's irresponsible. Sarah is failing because she's human, operating inside a system that has spent billions of dollars engineering her failure. The minimalists who've cracked this code didn't do it through superior willpower. They did it by restructuring their environment so that the default behavior, the path of least resistance, leads to wealth instead of consumption. They changed the game. They stopped fighting their psychology and started designing around it. And the way they did it comes down to 3 specific, sequential steps. Which brings us to the part of this video I suspect you actually came here for. I want to talk to you like a human being for a moment, not like a content creator. Most financial advice is a product. It's designed to make you feel temporarily empowered while keeping you dependent on the next piece of advice, the next course, the next tool. There is an entire industry built around the idea that you are perpetually broken and perpetually fixable for the low price of $29.99 per month. What I'm about to give you is not that. What I'm about to give you is a system, 3 steps, not 30, not a 90-day challenge. 3 foundational shifts that, once implemented, run quietly in the background of your life, generating financial momentum without requiring your constant attention and willpower. This is how the minimalists do it. This is the quiet architecture of intentional wealth. Forget traditional budgeting. Budgeting is reactive. It asks, where did my money go? The minimalist asks a different, more powerful question. Where should my money go before it goes anywhere else? This is the zero-based audit. Every single month, before you spend $1, you give every dollar a job. You start from zero, not from last month's habits, not from what feels normal, and you deliberately, intentionally allocate your income with one non-negotiable constraint. A minimum of 20% goes to future wealth before anything else is considered. Not savings, not a high-yield account paying you 0.04%. We're talking investment index funds, retirement accounts, assets that compound. This money leaves your account automatically, on payday. Before your brain even registers it as available, it becomes invisible. And because human beings adapt to their available resources, we spend what we see, you simply learn to live on 80%. This is not radical. This is structural. You're not relying on willpower. You're redesigning the pipeline so that wealth accumulation is the default, not the goal. Then you conduct the invisible expenditure audit we walked through with Sarah. Every subscription, every recurring charge, every ambient spend on the table. You eliminate ruthlessly. Not forever necessarily, but you start from zero and add back only what genuinely serves your life. Not your ego, not your anxiety, your life. The average person who does this exercise recovers between $400 and $900 a month, money that was already theirs, already earned, simply leaking through holes they'd stopped noticing. Step 2. The single complexity rule: own less, control more. Here is the second truth that minimalists understand at a bone-deep level. Complexity is expensive, not just financially. Cognitively, emotionally, energetically. Every object you own requires maintenance, attention, insurance, storage, eventual disposal. Every financial product you hold, every credit card, every subscription service, every special offer you said yes to at checkout creates administrative drag. It consumes decision-making bandwidth. And decision fatigue is real. The more choices you make, the worse your subsequent choices become. This is why wealthy people, counterintuitively, often own less in terms of complexity. Not fewer assets, but simpler systems. Warren Buffett still lives in the house he bought in 1958, not because he can't afford otherwise. Because simplicity is leverage. Simplicity frees up cognitive resources for high-value thinking and decision-making. The practical application: consolidate, automate, eliminate. 1 or 2 credit cards, not 6. Automatic investments, not manual transfers you talk yourself out of. A defined number of entertainment subscriptions, 3 maximum, and everything else cut without sentiment. When your financial life is simple enough that you can explain it in under 2 minutes, you're close. When it runs itself on autopilot and you review it once a month, you're there. Step 3. The quiet compounding identity becomes someone who builds. This is the step most financial content skips entirely. Because it's not about numbers, it's about identity. Every financial decision you make is preceded by an unconscious question. What kind of person am I? If your deep identity is someone who works hard and deserves to enjoy the fruits of that labor, which is what consumer culture tells you constantly, then every purchase becomes an act of self-affirmation. Spending becomes emotional, saving becomes deprivation. But minimalist wealth builders have made a quiet, powerful identity shift. They've stopped seeing restraint as sacrifice. They've started seeing it as power. Every dollar directed toward compounding assets is not money lost to enjoyment. It is a soldier sent out to fight for your future freedom. It is an act of self-respect, not self-denial. This is what I call the shadow mechanism, the hidden architecture of lasting wealth. It's not visible on the surface. It doesn't look impressive at dinner parties. You won't get social credit for it. Your friends won't see the automated transfer that happens every payday. They'll only see the outcome, years from now, when you have choices they don't. That's the point. Real financial power doesn't announce itself. It accumulates quietly, in the background, compounding invisibly like interest, like roots beneath soil, until one day it breaks the surface, and everyone wonders how it happened overnight. But it didn't happen overnight. It happened in 1,000 quiet, unsexy, deliberate moments that no one applauded. The minimalist understands something that the consumption-driven world cannot sell you. The most powerful financial moves are the ones nobody sees you make. The bank doesn't want you to understand compound interest working for you, only working for them. The retailer doesn't want you to pause before purchasing. The algorithm doesn't want you calm, content, and financially grounded because calm, content, financially grounded people are terrible consumers. So here's what I want you to do in the next 24 hours. Not a 90-day plan, not a year-long transformation. 24 hours. Pull up your bank statements. Find your invisible expenditure layer. Identify one recurring expense, just one that you've been paying for without actively choosing. Cancel it tonight. Take that money, whatever it is, $15, $45, $200, and set up a recurring automatic investment for the same amount starting this month. That's it. That's the first domino. Because here's what most people never discover. Starting is not a financial decision. Starting is a psychological event. Once you prove to yourself that you can redirect money once you feel the system, click into place and run without your constant intervention, something shifts inside you. The identity starts to change. The story you tell yourself about money starts to change. And when the story changes, the trajectory changes permanently. You were not born to work until you're 67 and hope the math works out. You were not born to be a revenue stream for institutions that see you as a demographic, not a human being. You were not born to trade your years for a paycheck and call it a life. The minimalists who figured this out are not special. They're not geniuses. They're not lucky. They simply decided, at some point, to stop consuming their future and start building it. One quiet, invisible, automated habit at a time. The system runs in the background. The wealth accumulates in silence. And the life, the actual, free, intentional life, waits on the other side. The question is not whether you can build it. The question is, what are you waiting for? If this shifted something for you, if any part of this video made you see your relationship with money differently, don't just like and subscribe. Go do the one thing, the 4-hour challenge. And then come back and tell me what you found. Because I read those comments. Because this matters. Because you matter not as a consumer, but as a person trying to build something real in a world that profits from your distraction. See you in the next one.